Ladies and gentlemen, happiness. Such a simple word, yet people spend their entire lives chasing it. You look for it in wealth, in relationships, in achievements, always hoping that the next thing will finally bring it. But have you noticed? Each time you get what you want, happiness stays for a moment and then slips away like sand through your fingers. Why is it so? Because happiness is not something you attain, it is something you are. If you need a reason to be happy, what you have is not happiness, it is just a pleasant consequence of an external event. The moment that event changes, your happiness is gone. If you truly want to be happy every time, every moment, then you must realize happiness is not outside, it is inside. It is not about what you have, it is about how you are. Look at a child, give him a stick, he is happy. Take away the stick, he is still happy. But as you grow up, you collect so many conditions for happiness. Only if this happens, only if that person behaves a certain way, only if the world is as you want it. No wonder happiness feels so fragile. Right now, if you close your eyes and do nothing, absolutely nothing, just breathe, are you not alive? Is this not a tremendous miracle? The very fact that you are here, that life is throbbing within you, is reason enough to be joyful. But you have forgotten the magic of simply being, and instead you are caught up in the madness of becoming. Happiness is your nature. It is not about getting something, it is about dropping what is unnecessary. It is not about arranging life in a perfect way, it is about experiencing life as it is, fully, without resistance. If you learn to live with this awareness, you will see happiness is not an event, not a pursuit, not a peak, it is simply the way you exist. So if you want to be happy every time, stop looking for it in the world. Just be, and you will see happiness is not a goal, it is your very nature. Most people spend their lives in the pursuit of happiness, as if it is some treasure buried deep within the sands of time. They believe that one day when they achieve enough, when they have the right relationships, the right career, the right social status, they will finally unlock happiness. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, where does happiness really come from? Is it something that arrives from outside, or is it something that is already within you, waiting to be uncovered? If happiness is truly external, then why is it that even those who have everything, the wealth, the fame, the power, still find themselves miserable? Why do people who have what you dream of still struggle with restlessness and dissatisfaction? This is because happiness is not something you attain like a possession. It is something you realize as your natural state. From childhood, you have been conditioned to believe that happiness comes as a reward. You are told that if you do well in school, you will be happy. If you get a good job, you will be happy. If you marry the right person, you will be happy. But have you noticed, every time you reach a goal, there is only a brief moment of happiness before your mind shifts to the next desire. It is like climbing a never-ending staircase, hoping that the next step will be the final one. This is why so many people, despite their efforts, remain unhappy. Because they are searching in the wrong place. They believe happiness is somewhere outside, when in reality it is something they carry within them at all times. Take a simple moment to observe yourself. Right now, if you close your eyes, sit still and just breathe without doing anything, are you not alive? Does life not pulsate within you? The ability to experience, to see, to feel, to exist, is this not already a miracle? But instead of realizing this, people are lost in their thoughts, always imagining a different reality, always postponing happiness for later. The truth is, happiness does not come from achievements. It comes from being in touch with life as it is. A person who realizes this does not need to chase happiness because they see that it was always there. It was just buried under layers of unnecessary desires and self-created struggles. When you seek happiness outside of yourself, you give control of your emotions to external forces. One moment things are going well and you feel good, the next moment something doesn't go according to your plan and suddenly happiness vanishes. This is because your happiness is tied to circumstances, which are always changing. But if you realize that happiness is not something given to you by the world, but something that naturally arises from within, then no external event can take it away from you. Just like the sun does not disappear simply because clouds cover it, your happiness does not vanish. It is only hidden by your own thoughts and identifications. The reason why happiness seems so elusive is that most people never take time to look inward. They are too busy chasing after things, believing that happiness is in the next destination. But the moment you stop running and simply sit with yourself, you will see it is not about getting somewhere. It is about seeing clearly. Have you noticed that children are effortlessly happy? Give them a simple toy and they will laugh, take it away, and they may cry for a moment, but soon they are happy again. This is because they have not yet built complex conditions for happiness. They have not yet learned the illusion that happiness comes from achievements. They simply exist, and in their existence, happiness flows naturally. The challenge for most adults is that they have collected too much mental baggage. They have built walls around their own happiness, believing that it can only exist if life happens a certain way. But life has its own intelligence, it does not follow your preferences. Sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. If your happiness depends on life matching your expectations, you will always be a slave to circumstances. But if you realize that happiness is simply the way you choose to experience life, then no matter what happens outside, you can remain joyful within. The key is not in controlling the world, but in realizing that happiness is already within you, waiting to be uncovered. If you observe yourself closely, you will see happiness is not a result, it is a state of being. It is not something you get, it is something you are. The only reason you don't experience it all the time is because your mind is too occupied with unnecessary complications. The moment you let go of the idea that happiness is somewhere in the future, the moment you stop trying to attain it and simply realize it, you will see. It was never lost. It was just forgotten. Most people live under the illusion that happiness must be earned. They believe that only when certain conditions are met, when they succeed, when they find love, when others appreciate them, will they finally be happy. But have you noticed, the happiness that comes from these external sources never lasts. Today you may feel joyful because someone praised you, but tomorrow the same person may criticize you, and suddenly that joy is gone. If your happiness depends on a reason, then it is not happiness. It is simply a reaction to life's ups and downs. A happiness that needs constant validation is a fragile one. It is like building a house on shifting sands. One small change and everything crumbles. Think about all the times you told yourself, I will be happy when I get that job, when I buy that house, when I find the right partner, and maybe when those things happened, you did feel happy, but only for a while. Then your mind moved on to the next desire. It is like filling a pot with a hole in it. No matter how much you pour in, it never stays full. This is the nature of reason-based happiness. It is a temporary high, a momentary satisfaction that fades the moment life brings its next challenge. If you need a reason to be happy, then happiness will always be something just out of reach, something that comes and goes, never staying with you permanently. The biggest mistake people make is assuming that happiness is something that happens to them rather than something they are. When happiness depends on external factors, you become a slave to circumstances. If things go your way, you are happy. If they don't, you are miserable. This means your inner state is entirely controlled by forces outside of you. But tell me, is it not foolish to give the key to your happiness to someone or something else? You may not have control over the world, but you do have control over how you experience it. If you live with the understanding that happiness is an internal state rather than an outcome, then no external event can shake you. Look at nature. A tree does not need a reason to stand tall and bloom, it simply does. A bird does not sing only when things are perfect, it sings because that is its nature. But humans have made happiness conditional. Only if everything goes the way I want, then I will allow myself to be happy. But life does not follow your conditions. Life happens the way it happens, not the way you want. If you tie your happiness to specific outcomes, you will spend your whole life struggling, because reality will never align perfectly with your desires. True joy comes when you realize that happiness is not about perfect conditions, but about your ability to embrace life as it is, in every moment. Some people believe that suffering is natural, that life is meant to be a struggle, and that happiness is rare, but this is not true. Happiness is not rare. What is rare is the ability to see it without attaching conditions. Right now, if you look at a child, they don't need a reason to be happy. They can find joy in the simplest things. In a leaf, in a puddle, in a smile. But as people grow up, they are taught that happiness must be deserved, that it must be earned through achievements and approval. This is why so many adults find happiness fleeting, because they have been conditioned to believe that it is something external rather than something that arises naturally from within. If you want to experience happiness all the time, then the first step is to stop looking for reasons. Stop waiting for something to happen before you allow yourself to be joyful. Right now, in this very moment, if you take a deep breath and simply exist without any expectations, without any demands, do you not feel a certain peace? That peace is happiness in its purest form, without a reason, without a condition. It is always there, but you have buried it under layers of desires and expectations. The moment you stop chasing happiness and simply be, you will see that it was never missing. It was only overshadowed by your own mind's demands. A happiness that depends on external events will always be temporary, but a happiness that comes from within is unshakable. The only question is, do you want to keep running after happiness like a mirage, or do you want to sit still and realize that it is already within you? If you understand this, then happiness will no longer be something you seek, it will simply be the way you exist. From the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, you are constantly setting conditions for your happiness. If people treat me well today, I will be happy. If my work goes smoothly, I will be happy. If nothing unexpected happens, I will be happy. But life does not follow your conditions. It has its own way, its own flow. And when things do not go according to your expectations, your happiness vanishes. Have you ever wondered why a small inconvenience, like getting stuck in traffic or a change in weather, can ruin your entire mood? It is not because of the situation itself. It is because you have created invisible rules for when you allow yourself to be happy. The more conditions you attach to happiness, the harder it becomes to experience it. Most people believe that happiness is something they must earn. They think it comes after achieving certain things, after getting the right job, the right house, the right partner. But look at those who already have these things. Are they always happy? No, because once one condition is met, the mind creates another one. Now I have a good job, but I need a promotion to be happy. Now I have a house, but I need a bigger one to be happy. This is an endless cycle. The problem is not with life, it is with the conditions you have placed on happiness. No matter how much life gives you, if you keep adding more conditions, happiness will always remain one step ahead, like a carrot dangling in front of you. Have you ever noticed how children experience happiness so effortlessly? Give them a simple toy and they will laugh with joy. Take it away and they may cry for a moment, but soon they find happiness again in something else. They have not yet learned to create conditions for happiness, but as you grow, society teaches you that happiness is something to be deserved, something that comes only when everything is perfect. But life is never perfect, and so people spend their entire lives waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right people, to finally be happy. In this waiting, life slips away. The reality is, happiness does not need any reason. It is your natural state. Right now, if you sit quietly and simply breathe, without thinking of what is missing, you will find that there is nothing lacking in this moment. The only thing that takes away happiness is the mind's constant demand for something more. It is like the sky, always present, always open, but if you fill it with clouds, you will not see its vastness. Your conditions are the clouds that hide the happiness that is already within you. Look at nature. Does a flower bloom only when the weather is perfect? No. It blooms because that is its nature. The sun does not shine only when people appreciate it. It shines because that is what it does. But human beings have created unnecessary complications. Instead of simply being happy, they create requirements for happiness. They say, only if this happens, I will be happy. But life does not follow your rules. Sometimes things go your way, sometimes they do not. If you attach your happiness to these outcomes, you will always live in uncertainty. The greatest realization is that happiness is not about perfect conditions. It is about your ability to embrace life as it is. Have you ever seen people who have very little, yet they are always smiling? And have you seen people who have everything, yet they are always complaining? This is because happiness has nothing to do with what you have or what happens around you. It has to do with how freely you allow yourself to experience life. The fewer conditions you place on happiness, the more effortlessly it flows through you. If you want to experience happiness every moment, then drop the unnecessary conditions. Do not wait for life to be a certain way before you allow yourself to be happy. Simply be, and you will see happiness. Happiness was never missing. It was just buried under your own rules and expectations. Most people live either in the past or the future, rarely in the present. They carry the weight of old regrets, failures and disappointments, allowing their past to shape their happiness. Or they are constantly planning, worrying and hoping for the future, thinking that happiness will come someday. But tell me, have you ever been happy in the past or the future? No. Happiness is always experienced now, in this very moment. Yet most people spend their lives postponing it. I will be happy when I achieve success. I will be happy when I find the right partner. I will be happy when life is perfect. But life is never going to be perfect. And in this waiting, you miss the only place where happiness truly exists. the present moment. Look at a child, they do not sit around thinking about what went wrong yesterday or worrying about what will happen tomorrow. They are simply here, fully engaged in whatever they are doing, laughing, playing, exploring. That is why they are so joyful. But as you grow, you are taught that happiness is something to be scheduled for later, that it depends on achieving something in the future. If you examine this carefully, you will see that this is just a trick of the mind. The moment you reach one goal, your mind immediately shifts to the next one. This is why even after achieving what you once thought would make you happy, you still feel something is missing. Right now, if you stop and simply breathe, without thinking about what has happened or what will happen, you will see there is no problem in this moment. The only problem is your mind's habit of wandering somewhere else, pulling you away from what is real. If you are eating, but your mind is worrying about tomorrow, are you really eating? If you are sitting with loved ones, but your mind is lost in thoughts, are you really with them? This is why so many people feel disconnected from life, even when everything is fine. It is not life that is lacking, it is their presence in the moment that is missing. The reason happiness feels so elusive is because people search for it in the future, believing that one day they will have it. But happiness does not work that way. The only time you can ever experience happiness is now. You cannot be happy yesterday, nor can you be happy tomorrow. You can only be happy in the present. But if your mind is always somewhere else, always chasing, always planning, then happiness remains out of reach. Not because it is far, but because you are not where it is. Nature exists only in the present. A tree does not think about its past or future, it simply grows, it simply is. A bird does not stop to worry about tomorrow, it sings because it is alive. But human beings, with their overactive minds, have created an illusion that happiness is somewhere ahead, always in the next step. This is why no matter how much they achieve, they still feel unsatisfied. Because happiness was never meant to be found in an achievement. It is meant to be experienced in the simple act of living. If you truly want to be happy, you must train your mind to be where your body is. Right now, if you are sitting, just sit. If you are walking, just walk. If you are breathing, just breathe. Do not let your mind drag you into the past or pull you into the future. The more present you are, the more you will see that happiness is not something that needs to be created, it is something that is already here, waiting to be noticed. Most people spend their life searching for happiness as if it is a hidden treasure, but happiness is not hidden. It is just that you are too distracted to see it. If you can bring your awareness to this moment fully, completely, you will see that there is no need to chase happiness. It was always here, in the present, waiting for you to finally arrive. Most people believe their happiness depends on others, on how they are treated, on how their life unfolds, on the circumstances around them. They live as if happiness is something that must be given to them. But tell me, if your happiness is always in the hands of someone else, is it really yours? If someone else can take it away, can change it at any moment, then you are not in charge of your own inner world. The truth is, happiness is not something that comes from outside, it is something you create within yourself. If you make your happiness someone else's responsibility, you will always be a slave to their actions, their words, their moods. But if you take full responsibility for your happiness, then no one, absolutely no one, can take it away from you. Think about it. If someone else had the power to make you happy, then they would also have the power to make you unhappy. If happiness is dependent on how others treat you, you will always be vulnerable to disappointment. One person appreciates you and you feel good, another person criticizes you and suddenly your happiness disappears. Is this a sensible way to live? A life where your peace is constantly at the mercy of others? Instead of waiting for the world to align perfectly so you can be happy, why not take charge of your own inner experience? Why not decide that no matter what happens outside, you will not give up your happiness? Many people believe that if they are unhappy, it is because of someone else. They blame their family, their friends, their boss, society, always pointing the finger outward. But tell me, when you are angry, when you are stressed, when you are miserable, who is experiencing it? You. It is happening within you. If something is happening inside you, should it not be your responsibility to handle it? If you break your leg, do you blame the road? No, you take responsibility for healing it. Similarly, if you are unhappy, instead of blaming the world, you must take responsibility for bringing yourself back to happiness. Taking responsibility for your happiness does not mean ignoring difficulties or pretending that problems do not exist. It means understanding that your emotional state is in your hands. If something goes wrong in your life, do you need to suffer endlessly because of it? If someone behaves badly toward you, do you need to carry that misery within you for days, weeks, or even years? No. Pain may happen, challenges may come, but suffering is always a choice. The moment you decide that no external situation will control your happiness, you free yourself from unnecessary suffering. Look at nature. Does a river stop flowing because someone throws a rock into it? No, it finds a way around and keeps moving. But human beings, instead of flowing through life, hold on to every little rock thrown their way. Someone said something hurtful years ago and they are still carrying it in their minds. Something did not go as planned and they are still suffering over it. This is because they have not taken responsibility for their own emotions. Instead of controlling their happiness, they let the past, other people, and external circumstances dictate it. But the moment you realize that happiness is something you create, you become free. Taking responsibility for your happiness also means letting go of excuses. If you keep telling yourself, I cannot be happy because of this situation, because of this person, because of this past event, then you are choosing to remain trapped. But if you ask yourself, how can I create happiness within me regardless of what is happening? Then you start to reclaim your own inner world. Happiness is not given, it is cultivated. It is a garden you must tend to every day. If you do not nurture it, weeds of misery will grow. But if you take responsibility, if you choose happiness every moment, then no matter what happens outside, inside you remain untouched. Most people want happiness, but they do not take responsibility for it. They wait for the world to make them happy, for others to behave perfectly, for life to be smooth. But life is unpredictable, people are unpredictable. If you wait for the world to align with your expectations, you will wait forever. But if you decide that happiness is your responsibility, then no external force can take it away from you. It becomes yours, not borrowed, not dependent, but truly yours to experience in every moment. Most people believe happiness is something that happens to them. If things go well, they feel happy. If things go wrong, they feel miserable. They think happiness is a product of luck, fate, or external circumstances. But tell me, have you ever met a person whose life is completely free of problems? No. Yet, you have seen people who, despite challenges, radiate joy, while others who have everything still remain unhappy. Why? Because happiness is not an accident. It is a choice. It is not something that falls upon you. It is something you must actively choose, moment to moment. Every day you are faced with situations that could disturb your peace. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your work does not go as planned. A loved one says something upsetting. In that moment, you have two choices: to react with frustration or to maintain your inner happiness. But most people believe they have no choice. They assume their emotions are automatic, that anger, sadness, and stress are inevitable. This is the greatest misunderstanding. What happens around you is one thing, what happens within you is another. You cannot always control the world, but you can always choose how you experience it. Look at your life. How many times have you ruined an entire day because of one small event? Someone said something unpleasant, and for hours, even days, you carried that pain. Not because the event itself was powerful, but because you chose to hold on to it. Instead of choosing happiness, you chose suffering. And if you observe carefully, this has been happening your whole life. Not just once, but repeatedly. The truth is, happiness is not something others can give or take from you. It is a decision you must make for yourself. When you wake up in the morning, do you choose to be happy? Or do you wait for something good to happen before allowing yourself to feel joyful? Most people wake up and immediately start thinking of their worries, their problems, their complaints. Then they wonder why they are not happy. But if instead you wake up and decide, no matter what happens today, I will not let anything disturb my joy, then you will see your happiness is no longer controlled by circumstances. It becomes your own conscious creation. The problem is, most people have trained themselves to react negatively. They have lived for so long believing that happiness is a result rather than a choice, that choosing happiness feels unnatural. But just like any skill, choosing happiness requires practice. If you practice frustration every day, you become an expert in it. If you practice stress every day, stress becomes natural to you. But if you practice joy, if you remind yourself again and again, happiness is my choice, not a reaction, then happiness will become your natural state. Some might say, but what if life is difficult? What if bad things happen? Understand this, difficulties will come, life will not always be comfortable. But is suffering the only way to respond? Can you not face life's challenges while still maintaining inner happiness? People think that being happy means ignoring problems, but that is not true. You can handle life's problems better when you are joyful. Have you noticed that when you are happy, even difficult tasks feel light, but when you are stressed, even small tasks feel like a burden? This is because happiness does not weaken you, it strengthens you. If you truly wish to be happy, stop waiting for happiness to happen to you. Stop treating it as something that comes from outside. Instead, take responsibility and make it your conscious choice. In every situation, ask yourself, do I want to respond with joy or with misery? The more you choose happiness, the more natural it will become, and one day you will see you no longer need to try to be happy. It will simply be the way you are. Most people believe that their happiness is tied to what happens outside of them. If life goes their way, they are happy. If life throws challenges, they become miserable. This means their happiness is not truly theirs. It is dependent on something they cannot control. But tell me, if something is truly yours, should it not remain with you no matter what happens? If your happiness disappears because of external situations, then it was never real happiness. It was just a temporary reaction to comfort, convenience, or success. True joy, inner joy, is something that remains untouched, regardless of what happens outside. Imagine you are holding a glass of water. If your hand is steady, the water remains still, but if you shake your hand, the water spills. This is how most people live. Their inner state is disturbed by every little shake in life. Someone says something unpleasant, happiness spills away. A small failure, happiness disappears. This is not because life is unfair, but because they have placed their happiness in fragile hands. If you truly want to be happy all the time, your joy must come from within, not from external situations, not from people, not from fleeting moments, but from a deep, unshakable source within you. Look at nature. The sun shines whether people appreciate it or not. Flowers bloom even if no one stops to admire them. The river flows whether people praise its beauty or ignore it completely. But human beings have complicated things. Instead of simply being happy, they create endless conditions for it. If people respect me, I will be happy. If my plans succeed, I will be happy. If nothing bad happens, I will be happy. But life does not work like that. Sometimes things go as planned, sometimes they do not. If your happiness is tied to these changing circumstances, you will always be at their mercy. The greatest mistake people make is thinking that joy comes after something, after success, after wealth, after recognition. But look at your own life. How many times have you achieved something only to find that happiness was still missing? This is because happiness does not come from something, it comes from within. If your inner world is settled, you can be happy in any situation. But if your inner world is disturbed, even the most beautiful experiences will not bring lasting joy. Some people say, but how can I be happy when there are difficulties? Tell me, have you ever solved a problem better by being miserable? Have you ever improved a situation by making yourself suffer? No. In fact, when you are joyful, you handle problems with more clarity, more strength, and more wisdom. Inner joy does not mean ignoring life's challenges, it means facing them with a steady, undisturbed mind. When your happiness comes from within, you become unshakable. Whether life is smooth or full of obstacles, your inner state remains untouched. Think of a tree with deep roots. When a storm comes, the tree may bend, but it does not break. Why? Because its roots are strong. But a tree with shallow roots will be easily uprooted by the slightest wind. Your happiness works the same way if it is rooted in external things, money, relationships, success, then any disturbance in these areas will shake you. But if your happiness is deeply rooted within, then no storm in life can uproot it. So the question is, do you want to live like a tree with weak roots or one that stands tall no matter the weather? If you want to be happy all the time, stop depending on outside circumstances. Look within, nurture the joy that is already there. The more you connect with your inner joy, the less the outer world can control you. And when that happens, you will see happiness was never something to be found. It was simply something to be uncovered within yourself. Happiness is not something you need to chase, nor is it something that life needs to grant you. It is already within you, waiting to be recognized. The only reason people struggle to find happiness is because they are looking in the wrong places, outside, in achievements, in others, in the ever-changing flow of life. But happiness is not in the future, it is not in the past, and it is certainly not in someone else's hands. It is here, now, within you. The moment you stop making happiness a condition, the moment you stop postponing it for another day, another event, another success, you will see there is no reason to be unhappy. Life will have its ups and downs, people will come and go, situations will change, but none of these things have the power to take away the joy that comes from within. The only question is, are you willing to take responsibility for it? Every single moment you have a choice, to be happy or to be disturbed, to embrace life with joy or to resist it with suffering. If you choose happiness not as a reaction but as a conscious way of being, then no matter what happens, you will remain untouched. Your joy will no longer be a fragile, temporary thing. It will be a deep, unshakable presence within you. So do not wait. Do not postpone your happiness for another time, another day, another situation. Right now, this very moment, make the choice, be happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because happiness is your nature. Once you realize this happiness will no longer be something you seek, it will simply be the way you are.